4, 3, 2, 2, and 1. You're live.
Welcome to Church Biz. I am your host, Reverend Patrina McClure. We have a special show on today. But before we get into that, remember that WCEG is your worldwide community empowerment group. So we have all the info, all the news that you need to be empowered to do what you've been called to do. And on today's show, we have one of the most respected leaders in the Atlanta area that is with us, and that is the incumbent Sheriff Ted Jackson of Fulton County, Georgia. Welcome, Sheriff Jackson.
Thank you, and I appreciate the invitation. I'm glad to be here with you, and I hope I can provide information that's new to your listeners.
Oh, thank you so much. I know your time is limited. It's very valuable, especially since we're in the heat of a re-election campaign. So we're just going to jump right into our meat items. Can you tell our listeners here about the HYPE Youth Development Conference that you host every year, the vision behind it? Because these are the things that have made you look stellar among all your constituents. You have no bad reputations behind you. You know, everyone has their critics, but no negative comments about you as an individual. Can you tell us about HYPE?
HYPE is, we care about our young people. And a lot of our programs, we work with our young people starting at 6 years old, all the way up to 20, because we want them to engage in good behavior to stay out of the system. And even when they are incarcerated, we have programs, and hopefully we'll get to talk about those as well. But HYPE was a program that we started in 2010, and you're very familiar with it because the first HYPE gathering we had was at Mount Ephraim.
Yeah.
And I'll mention that we have a chaplain program that you're a part of, and we have 160 chaplains because we believe that in order to work in the community, you got to work with the church. And you're going to be partners. You can't do it without the church. So we have 160 that are part of the outreach program and 150 that are part of the jail program. And they all volunteer their time, and it makes a big difference. But HYPE started in 2010, early in the year. We had a mother call in and said, I have a 14-year-old daughter. She's out of control. And if you can't help me, I'm going to end up killing her. And I said, well, you can't tell us that because you already confessed. But anyway, an hour later, she brought her daughter in, and the daughter really wasn't that bad. She had issues. A 14-year-old young lady going to have issues. We talked with her, and then we started getting other calls like that. And so we started a youth intervention program that the chaplains were part of. The youth intervention program is different from HYPE, but we were dealing with, in the youth intervention program, young people with behavior issues. So we decided, well, why don't we start trying to work with young people that don't have behavior issues, but need information they can't get from anywhere else. So your dad stepped up in Mount Ephraim, October. We do this. This is, this is our 10th year, I believe.
Yeah.
And second Saturday in October every year. So it's kind of up in the air this year. Basically, we started at Mount Ephraim, and we have 300 6th to 12th graders. And we filled up the gymnasium, and we learned a lot from the young people. The information we gave them, we had volunteers come in and talk about drugs and gangs. We had them talk about etiquette. We had somebody from the Centers for Disease Control talk about health issues. And then we had judges that talked about the system, all volunteers. This was our first one. And we try, in the sheriff's office, we try initiatives, even though we might not be successful. The problem for us, they're all successful, and then we get kind of bogged down. But at the end of the day at 3:30, the parents came to pick up the young people. The young people weren't ready to leave. So we had to separate the parents off, and they really wanted more information. And so we learned from the first one that maybe this is something we can continue. And so the second one was at Jackson Memorial. And then we decided, because the parents in the first one put pressure on us, they brought their 6th to 12th graders for us to babysit, because that's what it came down to. At 3:30, they're ready to go. And the parents were becoming irritating to us. So the second one, we had a session for the parents, and that went really well. But then the numbers got to the point where we needed a private facility. So we reached out to Atlanta Metro. In the last 8 years, we've been at Atlanta Metro. When we first started Atlanta Metro, their room wasn't really large enough, because, you know, when you get 800 young people and 300 parents together, you need some space. So Atlanta Metro added on some additional space, and we've been partners with them ever since. And some of the young people have come to every session. And the one we had last year, we had some come up to me and say, I've made every session. I've got a scholarship to college. You know, these are the kind of rewards you want to hear. And I'll go back and mention the first young lady, the 14-year-old. 2 years ago, she came up to me in a courthouse and she asked me if I remembered her. And I had to be honest, I didn't, because when I first met her, she was 14. That's why I didn't. And she was now 21. And she said, and I said, well, help me out. And she said, I'm 21. I was the young lady that came in, whose mother brought me in. I was way off. I was going in the wrong direction. But because of what we did for her, she was in nursing school. She turned her life around. She was 21. Those are rewards we get from HYPE, from all of our programs, because I think we have to make an effort to give back. You know, criticizing folks, and I'll say briefly, a lot of times we pick on young people, but because in our programs, we make a parent or guardian come with them, and then we have the parent or guardian tell us, why did you bring your child to us? And when they start talking, it's clear it's not the child. And I'll mention a young one in 2010. His name was Carlos, and he was 10 years old. So he's probably, hopefully, in college. And his stepmom looked like she'd just come out of Cheetah Club. Brought him in that morning. I don't have to describe that, hopefully. So she started talking, and Carlos was the worst 10-year-old I'd ever heard of. So when it was over, he came up, pulled my coattail, and he said, sir, can I talk to you? And I looked around and I said, did you just say sir? He said, yes, sir. I said, well, you're supposed to be bad. And you're saying, sir, yes, sir, you sound polite. He says, not me. My stepmom doesn't want me. So I talked to him, and I said, well, who's your support? He said, my grandma. Whenever I have problems, I call my grandmother. And I said, well, give us her number and we'll call. He told the truth. So we told him if he had any issues, call us. So that's how we do follow-up. And some of the parents that come through HYPE and youth intervention, we tell them, if you have additional problems, call us, we'll try to help you. And early on when we started, some of the parents would call and say, it didn't work, I got to bring them back. So we decided, okay, let's bring them back and see what happens. So we put a sign on them, repeat offender. And when they walked around the courthouse, people who had nothing to do with the program would go, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. You're a repeat offender. And then when they go to the jail, the inmates. And youth intervention, if you want to talk about that, that's another program where we believe we've had 98% approval. And we started that in 2010, the same time as HYPE. And what this program does, they have to come in, and I meet with the parents and the young people at 8:30 in the morning. And we first started, they came from as far as Montgomery, Alabama, South Carolina, because there was a program called Beyond Scared Straight. And we were featured on the program. And people kind of liked the program we had. It wasn't about scaring, it's about intervention. And so I talked with the parents and the youth, and I asked the parents why they bring them in. And we would kind of design a program for them individually. And we took up to 25, but when we had 15, 20, it worked better. And then we had a judge. A judge would talk to them about the system. That's the intervention. Here's what's going to happen to you. And you know, I got all kind of examples, but the one I like is a 10th grader. Her mother brought her in because she was smoking weed, and she was doing the best she could with her, and she needed help. And the judge said, "Well, why are you here?" And she got up proudly and said, "I'm here because I smoke weed." And the judge told us, "If you ever come before my courtroom, I'm gonna give you 8 years for one joint." And we know that's not possible, but if you really don't know any better, you get scared. And at the end of the day, what we do, after the judge, we take them to the jail. We take the young ladies to Union City, where it's nothing but women. And we take the guys that claim they're gang members and they're not scared of jail. We take them to the 7th floor where the most dangerous inmates are. And believe it or not, the inmates want to give back, because they say things, if this program was around when I was young, maybe I wouldn't be in here. And I believe that, because they said maybe. If they said I wouldn't be in here, that's a con. But they said maybe I wouldn't be in here. And they work with us in turn. Well, this young lady came back. At the end of the day, we have the parents come and we have them write an essay. Whatever you learn, how you're going to change your life. The reason we do that is because some of these youngsters can't read and write. So that exposes them, so their parents know, I need a tutor because my child can't read and write. And, and they have enough self-esteem, they try so hard. But at the end of the day, she told her mother, "I'm sorry, I'm never going to smoke a joint again unless I move to California where it's legal, because I don't want to go to jail." And I think that's the reward we get when we work with young people. And I think we're going in the same way. Our friend sheriff's office, we all partners, and we do it with tough love, what you try to do with spiritual guidance. And at the end of the day, it really works. So.
And with me being a volunteer chaplain, there have been numerous times we've heard from the staff at the jail, at the Women's Center, how they need us, how they can't even help to manage the population without that spiritual intervention as well. So you're right. It works hand in hand, the mentorship, the development piece, as well as the spiritual piece. And so I so agree with you on that, especially when it's your employees saying the same thing. But it's a blessing to be able to go in and minister when we can. Because of COVID, we haven't been able to. But HYPE is one, and the youth intervention are some of the strengths behind what you do as a sheriff, the prevention part. But then you do have to manage those that have broken the law. You have to keep them. You get protests outside the jail. Can you tell us your thoughts on that? Because you're pretty clear on that.
Well, I think there's confusion. That's why I appreciate being here. People think that we have control over the system. All the sheriff's office does is house inmates. We house them for trial, or if they're sentenced to less than a year, we house them, and we have programs to try to work with them. I think people get confused that they think the sheriff can let people out, can do things that are against the law. We have to follow the law like everyone else. And we can't let people out without the system. The judges decide the bonds, the bails. For those that we can let out for minor offenses, we don't hesitate. I talked to somebody, I won't mention his name, said he was going to be involved in a protest and wanted us to know. And I was thinking when they had those Monday deals at the State House. And he said, I'm going to get arrested. I just want you to know that I'm going to be coming to your jail. And I said, well, you won't stay long because we got standards and you'll never meet those. So the point I'm making is that some people don't belong in jail. And what I'm seeing now with the protesters and the criminal justice reform, we've been doing that since 2009. We're working with people to try to get them a second chance. We have reentry programs, recidivism programs, and our programs, we're the only ones in the nation that have these programs, and they're right here in Fulton County. And a lot of people don't know that Fulton County is setting a tone as a model for reentry for the future.
Excellent, excellent. Can you talk about recidivism? Because a lot of your community, basically the citizens don't understand this process. They hear that word about people going back to jail over and over again. What are some of the things that we can do as citizens to help curb that rate?
Well, there are a lot of things. The educational preventional programs keep people out the system. That's the main one. But when you get in the system, we have programs. In 2009, we tried to increase our GED program. And so we had Miss Murray Brooks, Tyrone Brooks' wife, actually come in, Dr. Brooks. And she brought up some retired teachers and others to do an assessment of the GED program to see how many inmates we would have to qualify for the GED program. And a little quick story, one of the principals was in an area testing one of the inmates. And she said, well, when you were in school, you wouldn't listen to me. Now you got to listen to me. But you got to have, and you got to have a sense of humor when you're talking with people. You can't be mean-spirited. You got to be respectful, and you got to make people feel good about themselves. So they tested 995 inmates, and 65% read on a 3rd to 8th grade level. And we were very surprised by that. So we didn't have as many to work with as we wanted to. And then we had volunteers come in and do a pre-literacy program. And what we found, and everybody says the same thing, so it's got to be true. 3rd and 4th grade, you fall behind, you never catch up. And so in the pre-literacy program, we had inmates that after 3rd and 4th grade fell behind, and we had volunteers come in. And one was the mayor from Riverdale. She actually came up and worked with the young ladies. And we had our first graduation, and Channel 2 actually came by. Good news, things that are positive doesn't sell very much. But when you do something for the first time, you got a good chance. And a reporter from Channel 2 and some of the others actually came to graduation, because in all our programs, we want the inmates to have self-esteem and also have support when they get out. So when their relatives and others come into the graduation, they know from that, when they're released, if we work with them, maybe we can keep them out of the system. And we say recidivism means that I think at least 60% commit crimes within 3 years and come back. It's like a revolving door. So in order to break that, you got to be innovative. And the reporter came in, got all set up. We were in the jail, and an inmate by the name of Calvin got up. He read a Langston Hughes poem. He couldn't read and write. And his grandmother was there at the graduation. And he read the poem to her, and she fell apart. The reporter fell apart. He didn't get a story because everybody was shocked. And he said before that, he had to buy a commissary for somebody to write for him and to read for him. But after that, he can read and write. And so the pre-literacy program continued, but it's on a volunteer basis. And you mentioned, how do we get help? I mean, you're a volunteer, other volunteers come in and want to help, but you got to have the desire. You can't come in and try to fool inmates that you care. And we've had some volunteers have been with us for years, like yourself, and it makes a difference. And you mentioned Union City. Union City is all for females only, but 21% of them have extreme mental health issues, behavioral health issues. And I got to give the county an accolade. We have a really good healthcare provider, and we've set up a program for them. And I don't know if you made the first graduation. The first graduation was February 25th. And there was some women in the program that were just given up on. And because of this program and the counseling, at graduation, they were completely different. And one of the counselors actually mentioned when she first met the inmate cussed her out, wouldn't do anything for her. And now they're friends, and we were able to get her into a location. Little things like that happen, but the point I'm making, they shouldn't be in jail in the first place. And now, hopefully, with the protests, with criminal justice reform, we'll change that. So if you have mental health issues, you don't come into the jail for treatment. It's not fair to the person that's arrested, and it's not fair to our employees because they're not social workers. They're law enforcement. And so we've had to change everything that we do that try to meet what we have. And you mentioned earlier, there's very little criticism against the sheriff's office. And I shouldn't say that, but it's true. And it's because we work so hard, and the employees we have really believe in what we're doing. And it couldn't happen without them. So they deserve all the accolades about all that we do. All I do is stay out of the way, and it works.
That is awesome. You're allowing everybody to operate in their own callings, if you will. How did you find your way into being a servant of the community? How did you answer this call to become a sheriff or in the, how do you say, the criminal justice system?
Well, back in the day, you're probably too young to remember the name J. Edgar Hoover. But I was a Vietnam veteran, and when I came out of the service, there was very little diversity in the FBI, and so I applied for the FBI, and I spent 32 plus years, and the last position I had was agent in charge of the Atlanta field office that covered the state of Georgia, and I had a number of other executive positions. One of them in Washington, I oversaw the entire FBI civil rights program. So when I joined the FBI, and I'd like to encourage young people to think about careers in law enforcement. When I joined the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, was J. Edgar Hoover, that's all I'm gonna say. And my friends, and some of my friends turned on me because I joined the FBI. But what I said was, and it works today, if you wanna make change, if you wanna change the way things are, get inside and do that. And I was able to do it. And young people that are complaining, you can make a difference. Get inside and make change, because people will listen to you. And things will be better off because you bring a perspective that might not be known. So when I retired from the FBI in July 26, 2004, the governor appointed me interim sheriff for 5 months. So that started me off. I never dreamed of ever being a sheriff. And at the end, I went back into retirement, and then the sheriff's office kind of fell apart. That's all I'm going to say. In 2008, my wife got a call, Renee, wanting to know if I was going to run for sheriff. And I figured it was 9 candidates. I get in the race. I'm number 10. I lose. They leave me alone. But it didn't happen. And then once I went in, we had a lot of work to do. And we had a sheriff's office that was considered the worst in the state. It was probably one of the worst in the country. And now we're recognized as one of the top sheriff's office, not only in the state, but in the US and internationally. And I'll say internationally because the program, we have a grant from the US Department of Justice. And this grant is to deal with smart justice reentry. We received the grant in 2016, and we had a 95% success rate of inmates not coming back when they went through the program. So the Department of Justice re-upped it last year, 2019, and because of the Department of Justice grant, the US Department of Health and Human Services, they were working with inmates once they were released for alcohol, drug addiction, and mental health. But what they realized, it was too late once they were released, and their success rate was minimal. So they saw that what we did with our grant, and they offered the only grant to any jail in this country. Now we can work with them inside. And then when they were released, Department of Health and Human Services got a head start, and then they can work with them. So that's become a model. Now on the other one with the Department of Justice, that's becoming a model for the Department of Justice because criminal justice reform now is the topic. And not only for the US, we got communications from the UK, from London. They found out about the program and they're talking to us. They want to bring it to Europe. So even though we're doing things locally, when it has impact nationally and internationally, you're working with a lot of people. And to me, this is the best way to deal with criminal justice. And we're going to always have problems because crime is crime. Crime's been around forever. But if we address mental health, we address education, and we address those that get caught in the system. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the jail programs. We have a culinary program, and the chef that runs the culinary program retired from the airport Hilton after 30 years. And he knows the kitchen, and we get 100 every 6 months. Y'all don't hear about that. But if you come on a tour, we make sure you see that 100 every 6 months. In the culinary program, we identify inmates. They work in the kitchen and get skills. And when they get a certificate, they're released, we help them get jobs. We have another program we've had for 7 years, Susan Jacobs Meadows. She has the K-9 Cellmate program. And you might have seen the K-9 Cellmate program because we've gotten a little bit of favorable press on that. But she identifies dogs that are going to be euthanized. And then we identify inmates to match them up. And after 8 weeks, the dogs are adopted. The inmates get a certificate. We get them jobs, and they change their lives. And in our programs, and we have cosmetology for women, we have mental health for men and for women. We try to come up with programs, and even though we're reaching a small percentage, we're showing that it works. So if criminal justice becomes the next arena, we know what we can do to make things work. And what I do at graduation, I have the inmates talk about it. We had one inmate, he's 55 years old. He scored the highest score ever in GED. And he, at graduation, he said, I'm 55 years old. This is the first time anybody ever cared about me. And what he meant, his parents were druggies. He was a druggie. He was in and out of jail. But even the GED program, you just don't get in a GED program. We do counseling first. We call it New Beginnings. And you've probably heard of New Beginnings.
Yes.
And New Beginnings is isolate you by yourself so you can think about your life. If you could have it all over again, what you would do different. And think about what you did wrong, where you went wrong, and now you want to correct yourself. And he said at graduation, I'm 55, I'm never coming back in here again. I'm gonna get myself a job and turn myself around. Now the mark he left with us is 55. It's too bad we couldn't reach him sooner. So now we have 17-year-olds in the jail. So we have a program with them. And in jail, they get along. They're different gangs and they talk about each other. If we go back on the street and I'm in the hood with you, I'm gonna have to take you out. So that's why we need these reentry programs. So when they get out, they don't go back to where they came from and get in trouble again. And they can get jobs and turn themselves around. And it makes you feel good at the end of the day. For me, when I go to a graduation, I leave, I feel really good because, and I told, I got one more. This was an inmate that was in the culinary program. And he'd been in and out, and his wife came, and our public information officer came over to me and says, you got to go over and talk to her. She is off the chain, the wife. So I went over and I said, what's your problem? She said, I don't know why I'm here. He said, he's in and out of jail. He done conned me again. I can't believe I'm sitting here. So I told her, I said, well, this one's different because the counseling's from New Beginnings. He wants to change his life. And I said, and he's really trying and he needs your support now more than ever. And I said, now here's my card. And if he messes up, you call me personally and I'll come get him. I don't know why I said that. but I never heard from her again, which means he turned his life around. And I think the message there is try not to give up on anybody. But sometimes you have to. And we work very hard to not give up on anybody. And we talk with them, we spend the time. And like you said, we have a captain, Captain Glanton, and she's really serious about this. And you know her. And she's in charge of these programs and she doesn't half step. And that's what we need to make a difference. And I believe we made a difference and you've been there to see it.
Oh, yes. Oh, definitely. Especially, I really love the New Beginnings program because those that participate in it, they have a totally different perspective than some of the other inmates in the facility at the women's unit. Also, do you have any younger programs available to the public? Like if families have missing fathers? Is there any type of programming you have to help those boys who lack that fatherly type direction?
Well, we don't have a program per se, but we work with organizations that have that. And Commissioner Arrington does something during the holidays for parents of children, you know, to kind of keep them together. And we would like to do more. And I hate to say,
Yeah.
we can only do so much because I
Yes.
talked about earlier, because if we get bogged down too much, then our employees, you know, they get complacent and it won't work. But we started at 6 years old. We have a program called a highway pedestrian program. We got a grant from the Department of Highway for the state of Georgia. We've had this grant for 5 years. As a matter of fact, this year was going to be our 5th bicycle rodeo, but we had to cancel because of the pandemic. But in this program, we start in preschool, teaching young kids how to cross the street. And we go to preschools, we talk to kindergartners, and we give them instructions and talk with them, because we take for granted that people drive reasonably, but they don't. And a child trying to cross the street can get hurt, or riding a bicycle. So that's what it is, pedestrian safety. And as a part of the pedestrian safety, 5 years ago, we came up with what we call the bicycle rodeo for 6 to 14-year-olds. And we had bicycles donated. And what we learned is, we thought we were just going to do a bicycle safety program, and some of the kids didn't have bicycles. And when we first started, we raffled off bikes, and we felt bad at the end when a kid, you know, would cry because they didn't get one. And then last year, we had bikes left over. And that was because of the chaplain program donating, other community organizations donating. Every child not only got a bike, they got to pick the bike out they wanted. It wasn't a raffle. And we say 6 to 14, but Nisi Shaw from 102.9, I threw that out there because I owe her that. She came out and did the live show last year. And when it was time to give the bikes out after all the training and everything, she said, all of you 5 years and younger, come forward. And I'm thinking, no, this is 6 to 14. And we saw the line with the 5-year-olds and below. And fortunately for us, we had bikes for 2 or 3-year-olds. And we had some of those left over. So to me, starting at 6 years old to 14, this is the first, I guess, relationship these kids have with law enforcement. And we have the Atlanta Police Department, others, and we do it over now in the yard right next to Convention Center. And it's positive. And I think the communities and law enforcement have to find a way to get together, because if they don't, you're going to have chaos, the chaos that we have now. And then we have a junior deputy program. Junior deputy program, 6th graders on up. We spent a week, we couldn't do that this year as well. And then we have the GREAT program, we can't do that. Gang resistance education training for 4th graders. I mean, we try to hit the areas where we know, because gang members now, they're starting as young as 10 years old. And so we have to react to that, to try to change that atmosphere and that attitude. And I think we have impact. It's not as much as we want, because we're human and we can only do so much. But the percentage that we touch makes a difference, because when you have bullies come in, youth intervention, when Beyond Scared Straight was filming it, we had a few people come in and they told the deputy, take that badge off and I'll kick your butt. They didn't say it like that, but the deputy, and you know, you're talking to a 13-year-old.
Yeah.
You're standing there in a position of authority, and he tells you, take that badge off, I'll kick your butt. Of course, we didn't overreact, but we got them to respect authority. And then what I liked about Beyond Scared Straight was they came back 30 days later and they selected the people that participated. We have any control. And I remember the first group they brought in, I saw that, I go, oh no, the whole world gonna see us fail. It was that bad. But by the end of the day, they'd all changed. And when they came back 30 days later, because we would like to do follow-up and we can't. I mean, we just don't have the resources for that. But when they came back and they saw the difference, we had one that was 16 years old. His mother brought him in because he was stealing cars. He was running with gangs. And she said it was just a matter of time. Either he was going to end up killed or locked up. So he gets into jail, and his stepdad happens to be in the wing where he is. And one of the inmates recognized him and called his stepdad and said, "Hey, your stepson's out here." And this is on, I mean, it was on the program. And we didn't plan any of this. It happened. And he came out, he talked with him, kid cried, he went home, he started making A's and B's. When the crew came back from Beyond Scared Straight, he cooked a cake for our deputy, and they sat there and talked, and Mom couldn't believe it. And these things actually work. But the problem we have is the public's not aware of any of this. Now, if you, we were told Beyond Scared Straight was helpful because some of the parents looked at the program with their kids, and the kids said, "Oh, I don't want to go in that jail." And they straighten out. And we got to have, you know, people think, well, you know, that's going too far. Well, it's depending on who you're working with. And if it works, it works. I mean, we didn't abuse anybody. We just kind of gave them the way of life and way things work. And that's what we bring to the table when we're talking to young people. And, you know, in addition to that, we protect our seniors too. We've been to, if we haven't been, we've been to almost every senior center in the county because seniors are preyed on, P-R-E-Y, you've heard me say this.
Yes.
And they need to know what's out there because back in the day, everybody respected seniors. They didn't disrespect them. They didn't do the things that young people are doing now. And seniors got to be careful and they got to make adjustments.
Also, I love how you have the Thanksgiving giveaways. Again, these are things that the Fulton County Sheriff's Office, under your leadership, they do annually. And the community is really not aware of what all you do. They just think it's as simple as, my child got locked up, let them out. And it's not that simple of a process. You have your hands in a lot of things, and you're actually doing what parents should have been doing when they were raising their kids. I mean, that's to summarize the whole scope of the matter. But can you talk about the Thanksgiving giveaways as well?
And I'll just mention the parents. The parents sometimes, we want to keep the parents and let the kids go home.
Right.
And you can tell when talking to the parent. You know, we had a parent come in and say, brought a 14-year-old. He's not helping her out and doing anything. And then when she started talking, she says, "I got 7 kids and 1 on the way." And even the other bad parents in the group start looking at her like, "What do you mean?" She was expecting a 14-year-old to help her raise the kids. But for the Thanksgiving baskets, I have to give my due to the chaplain program because the chaplains came up with that. And we get quite a number of donations from the churches. And we have a contest within the office on the shifts to fill up bins. And this is all donated. And then we have others, other churches that are not part of the chaplain program donating, because what we're trying to do is help people that are misfortunate. And that's what I think all of us should be doing. People need help. We need to help them, because if you help them, maybe you can get them to go straight and maybe not commit crimes. And so last year, I think we made almost 300 baskets. And one of the TV, I won't mention his name, was talking about the story. He said, most people for Thanksgiving give out meals. He said, we give out groceries. And those boxes are heavy. They have turkey, ham. They have enough food in there, and not only lasts for Thanksgiving, they can make it through Christmas with it. And it's all donated. And in the beginning, when we started, we were depending on people referring folks, and it just wasn't working, because I go out with them. You know, you drive up to a house with a brand new Cadillac in it. It's not, wait a minute, I don't think we need to drop a basket here. And you knock on the door and they say, well, I might have a Cadillac in the driveway, but I lost my job and I need food. So we have to adjust how we do things. And so what we try to do is really find the most needy. And I'll mention another family. We had an extra basket. And so we drove around the neighborhood and I saw a house that really didn't look anybody. I mean, when you look at it, the roof was falling in, it looked abandoned. And I said, well, let's stop and see if anybody lives in there. And we stopped, knocked on the door, and there was a mother and there were 3 daughters. They were hurting so bad. And I told them, hey, we have an extra box, well, we call it baskets, for Thanksgiving. Would you like it? And they broke down and cried. And so they weren't on a list, but just driving around. And sometimes when we have extra baskets, we'll drive around the neighborhood and just pick a house that we think could use some help. And now we're almost up to 300. This year is going to be really tough for us. I really don't know how we're going to make it through, but it's appreciated. And then I'll add in the homeless program. This is going to be our 10th anniversary of the homeless program, started by the chaplain program. And it's the second Saturday in August every year. And so this year was going to be the big year because it's the 10th anniversary. So we're trying to come up with some kind of way where maybe we can deliver some items to people that are homeless that, you know, we know where they're located. Because I don't believe we can bring a group of 800 together along with our staff, because it's just not, when you look at the numbers, and I'll throw this out, in the jail, we've had very minimal issues with the pandemic because of what we do. But when you look at society as a whole, the numbers are going up, deaths are going up, and we're in a crisis. And we got to be careful and use common sense, because the scientists are telling us what we need to do. And some people tend to ignore it. And then all of a sudden, you look at Texas, Arizona, and Florida, they're running out of hospital beds. And Georgia, we're in the top 10. So we got to be really careful. So for the homeless initiative this year, we're going to go to where they are and pass out items that they need, face masks, hand sanitizers, and other things. But that's one of our, to me, one of our best programs with the partnership with the chaplains that we have.
Awesome. One other thing I want to mention is how you are an excellent cook, because I still remember last year at the Father's Day event, I was totally surprised to see that you had your own booth set up and you're making the barbecue sliders, and you were so unassuming that if people didn't know that you were the sheriff, they just thought you were someone else just handing out food. And I love that about you, your humility. You never have the big head. You never think of yourself better than anyone else. You always see yourself as a part of us. And I love that about you and your wife. Oh man, if anyone has the blessing to meet Renee Jackson, I mean, they, all the more is added to them, because you always walk away from her being empowered, feeling like I can tackle the world now. So I can only imagine how you feel at the house. But she was responsible for helping to get you on today, checking your calendar, making sure you're available, and all the details were shared to make sure you were here today. But what is it that you want your voters to know in regards to August 11th? Because we really want you back in there. And so what do we have to do? I mean, I know we have to vote, but you just gave a whole list of things that you're already doing, not about to start. You already are doing these things. So what do you want the voter to know?
Well, this is not the time for change. You need experience and you need proven leadership. And what we've done in the sheriff's office, no scandals, no controversy. We're very professional, and change is not, this is not the time for change, because we're in the middle of a pandemic. I didn't go into a lot of details, but what we have set up in the jail, our numbers are minimal when it comes to positives. What we do when you first come in, even if you come in off the street or your staff first thing they do, including me, is check your temperature, because we're trying to keep the staff from bringing it in. And if you're an inmate, when you come in, we check you. And even though you might be negative or not have a temperature, we're going to quarantine you for 14 days and have the medical staff check you frequently. And the reason for that is that we don't want you to get into the population, because if you get into the population and you're positive, it's going to shut us down. And San Quentin and other prisons and federal prisons have allowed that to happen. So now's not the time for change. Additionally, they're trying to open the courthouse. So we're trying to work with the courts to, at some point, reopen the courthouse, because we have inmates that are sitting in the jail awaiting trials, but we can't have trials, we can't have grand juries. I mentioned the reentry programs. We're right in the beginning. 2 programs just approved last year. Additionally, we hope by the end of the year be a Triple Crown rated agency. Triple Crown means that you've met the highest standards for the jail and for law enforcement in the country. When you hear people talking about chokeholds and excessive force, when you're accredited nationally, you don't have those issues. So we're almost there. We've got one more issue, the jail. And the Triple Crown was lost. We need to get that back so we can be a recognized agency that people can be proud of. And what I tell people is, look at the sheriff's office for yourself. No, I'll say again, no controversy, no scandals, very professional. We work with all the police departments in the county. We also work with state and federal agencies, and we address problems dealing with drugs and gangs, sex trafficking, terrorism, and we work with the Secret Service, dignitary protection. These are relationships that the sheriff's office never had before. And these are public safety issues. And even though things are happening now because of unrest, the sheriff's office is behind the scenes working. We've been in East Point, College Park. We've been with Atlanta from May 29th until now, protecting the public. But like you said, I'm not in front of the cameras, I'm not bragging, and that's what I get criticized for, but I'll take the criticism, because people that are doing it should be the ones out front, should be the ones recognized. And this is 21st century, 21st century leadership. The leaders stay behind the scenes and let other people get the credit. The people that are doing the work get the credit. Back in the day, you know, head of agencies took credit for everything. And I saw that in the FBI, and they weren't doing anything. And so they fooled people. But 21st century, we push people out front. The new group of employees that we have deserve to be out front, and they want to be out front. They don't want to see a leader that's always in front of the camera taking credit for everything. You don't want to see a leader that's narcissistic, and I'm gonna leave that one alone.
Awesome. I'm gonna leave that one alone too. But I really appreciate being up under your leadership. As a volunteer chaplain, you all continue to make opportunities available to us, you know, pre-pandemic. If we wanted to come in and do more, once a year, we would have the training, you feed us. And then we have the regular monthly meetings that we can attend free will. And you're at all of those meetings. And so that is to be respected. You are accessible. You know, anyone who wants to get in touch with you, they can through your staff. They're accessible. They're into the vision that you have established for Fulton County Jail. And I am hoping that, I don't live in Fulton County, but if I could, I would vote for you. But I'm hoping more of our Fulton County residents will elect you, because it is so deserving. And even if you have a loved one to go to the jail, a good place to go. So I give you all the accolades. Again, you come and support everybody else as well. You know, you're not about, hey, come and look at me and what I'm doing. And like you just finished talking about, you come out and support your own, and that speaks volumes. But I want to thank you for being a part of our show. How can people get in touch with you and your campaign?
They can, we have a website, and it's reelectsheriftjackson.com.
Awesome.
And if it's business related, they can call me at 404-612-5108. And I'll make the point. Fulton County has 1.1 million people.
Yes.
And the census is out. We're probably going to end up at 1.5 million people. I can't respond to everybody. And that's why you mentioned that we have a staff. And if anybody needs to talk to me, they can get to me. But when they call and if they don't need to talk to me, the staff is going to handle it. And I've heard complaints about that. But can you imagine 1.1 million people? Then we have the state capital, the largest city. You know, if every one of them, you know, if I tried to talk to everybody to call, I just can't possibly do it. It's the way we have it set up, if you call in, you have an issue, you're going to get an answer right away.
Awesome. And I want to mention too how organized the sheriff department is. At all of the events, you know, you watch how much time you spend at the events, how well they're planned. You make sure that your people that are capable to do whatever you've assigned them to do, that they are able to do that, as well as they're very personable as you are. And I love that too. So everybody understand that Sheriff Jackson has a capable staff. So you don't have to worry about talking with him directly. If need be, they will get you in touch with him. But also, they are very, very capable people. So have a little bit confidence for them as well. Very friendly staff. Sheriff Jackson, I want to thank you for being a part of our show again on today. I know you are usually volunteering now. That's what your wife is telling me, has told me. So we're going to let you go. But again, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I look forward to another term with you. And everybody, thank you for tuning into Church Biz on today. Be blessed. I'm signing out as Reverend Patrina White McClure, your host for today. Take care.
Thank you.